Hey, well, welcome back to The Balancing Act. Nick, good morning. How are you?
Good in you, bro.
Good, mate. I love that shirt on you. I want to make all manner of comments, but it's really nice. Did you
Thanks.
bring that from Africa?
South Africa, yeah.
From South Africa?
Yeah, because I don't come just from Africa. I come from South Africa, but yeah.
Why do you need to make such distinctions? Why do
Because
you feel like it's important? I don't understand. I don't understand, mate. But anyway, it's a nice shirt. You probably can't buy that in most shops. So I'm glad you're wearing it this morning. Hey, mate. This morning we've got an amazing opportunity today to talk. We're going to be chatting with Dr. Patricia Weerakoon, who is a medical doctor trained as a medical doctor, but specialises in sex and gender. Has written prolific amounts of works, 10 odd books, ranging from fiction and non-fiction stuff in that space. And you can check out her website.
Yeah, I discovered that this morning. It was pretty interesting. I was quite pleased with the fictional stuff. I thought it was pretty funny.
You did. You did dine out on that. If you want to know more, go and check out Patricia's website and go and check out her writings in that regard. But spends a lot of time talking around the nature of sex and sexuality. Has written, and here's just a couple of her books. Out of the 10, she's written books. Teen Sex by the book. You wrote that in 2013. And then Growing Up by the book, looking at the nature of kind of teenage life and adolescence and growing and understanding in the midst of all of that. The Best Sex for Life.
I think that's the topic today.
And that is actually the topic for today. So The Best Sex for Life. And Patricia wrote that in 2016, which is really cool.
That's cool.
And then Birds and the Bees by the book for children in 2017.
And that's a series, right?
That is a series.
A collection of books, which I think is pretty cool for parents, just to help talk through some of those spaces, which is something that I'm confronted with, right? Because I've got my son 7 years old, my daughter's 4, and it's like, these are some things that are going to be...
Yeah, and even for me, my kids are older, right? So they're nearly 20, 18 and 17, nearly, and so these are kind of tools that I kind of wish we'd had early on. And so I think this topic around sex and relationships is so vital.
Absolutely.
And I do wonder how much and how helpful the church has been in discipling people in this space.
Yeah.
My take is probably not brilliantly across the board, which is why we've got Patricia on this morning. So Patricia, welcome to The Balancing Act. It's so good to have you.
Great to be with you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Wish I could be with you in beautiful Orange, but hey. Sydney will have to do.
Oh, we'd love to have you back. You were up here not too long ago with your husband, Vazantha, as well. And did you enjoy our region while you were up here?
Oh, we loved it. It was supposed to be past winter, but it was freezing. But never mind. We loved it anyway.
Yeah, we get that comment a lot, to be fair.
It's still pretty cold.
Oh, come on, Nick. Toughen up, mate. It's all right. You'll be fine. Thanks so much for joining us. One of the things that, as we were just exploring then, the challenge on understanding sex and the way, or perhaps the way the church hasn't always done a brilliant job in terms of discipling people. One of the kind of questions that we've been pondering is, do our people learn more about the beauty of sex from the world rather than from the creator of sex in the first place? And what kind of challenges that kind of brings? So can we ask you this morning, why is sex in marriage so important?
Well, thank you for that, because that is a significant question, but it's also something that people just take for granted. Sex, marriage, they kind of go together. But as a sexologist, which is basically somebody who studies and reads and researches and writes about sex, and an evangelical Christian, the wonderful thing is that sex in itself, firstly, let's just take sex on its own. Sex in itself, scientifically, is a binding act. Fascinating. We have desire and falling in love. And then we have sexual intimacy. Yeah. Now, when a couple are sexually intimate, they bind at a brain level. There are chemicals called oxytocin, vasopressin, and this has been researched. We're talking decades of scientific research with animals and humans. It's the same hormones that bind a mother to the baby when the baby is suckling at the breast. Wow. And when a couple have sexual intimacy, and note, I am not saying necessarily intercourse, but close sexual intimacy causes a bond. Now, even when we are speaking to little children, we say, it's teenagers, pre-teens, we say it's like a super glue bond which you form with someone. Yeah. And therefore, tearing it apart hurts. And this is one of the reasons why premarital sex is painful, really, because you fall in love and you break up, it hurts. You fall in love, have sex, intimate sex, intimacy, and break up, you actually grieve because you've broken that bond. And this is just science. So there is nothing casual about sexual intimacy. Sure. Sexual intimacy from a biological point of view is meant to bond two people together. That's just science. And that's what I'm so excited about being a Christian and a biologist as a doctor, because there is this beautiful congruence. Now let's look at the Word of God. Now God clearly says, through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, and mind you, let me speak to anyone there who thinks the Bible is like, so anti-sex and only says like, just don't do it. Completely wrong. I've read a lot of books about sex, and let me tell you, the Bible's got a lot of good stuff to say about sex. Yeah. So right from the beginning in Genesis to the end at Revelation, marriage is portrayed as something beautiful between one man and one woman in this intimate, the Bible in Genesis calls it the naked, no shame relationship. And as we tease it through the Bible, marriage is portrayed as so wonderful that it portrays Christ and the church, which, of course, as Christians, you will know. Yeah. Now, the point is, what then has that got to do with sex? Now, the beauty is that you can bring man and woman together, but then having sex is that binding for life. A couple make a commitment. So I like to think, the engagement is like a commitment. And then you get married, and as Christians, we call it a covenant relationship. But hey, if you're listening and you're not a Christian, you're still making promises to the other person when you get married. And so we say you commit, you take these promises, covenant promises, if you call it, and then you have coitus. Why? Because you made a commitment to care for the person, and now you have that sex which binds you together. Sure. And in that binding, you can have babies. So that's the beauty. Unfortunately, the world sees sex as like a commodity to be used. Yeah. Like, this is our world, my body, I can do what I want with it. Unfortunately, science itself shows that you can't do that. There is something deeply special about two people having sexual intimacy.
Wow. Yeah. Such a bigger framework that I think is really important for us and for people to grab hold of, that this isn't just from a biblical perspective. This is scientific in nature. That there is this binding that takes place. Yeah. And I think, and I do wonder in a society generally, that sex is the commodity. Yeah. That it is free. We have things like Tinder and all manner of different elements that in a sense dehumanize individuals just to simply someone who's going to be there to meet your needs. Like, it's very transactional. But what you're saying, Patricia, is that transaction is not clean, and is actually deeply rooted in our personhood. It's deeply rooted in connections that cause major fractures within ourselves and within others when we then break apart.
Yeah. Patricia, you alluded to sort of a distinction, though, between sexual intimacy and intercourse. And I wanted to sort of maybe just press into that space a little bit. I know this is maybe a little bit more later on, but you alluded to it now, and I thought maybe we could dive into why you made that distinction in sort of the way you portrayed sexual intimacy there.
Thank you for the question. But since you said we can make some changes, I'd like to add a little more on our earlier topic before we forget it.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
We also need to see that although we may be speaking from a Christian point of view, there are now secular philosophers and researchers who are clearly recognizing that the sexual revolution didn't work. For any of you out there who are listening, who want to follow someone or read about it, read anything or listen to YouTube from Louise Perry, Perry. And she wrote about the case against the sexual revolution, clearly saying it hasn't worked. So we're not just saying from a biblical point of view. Non-Christian atheists are speaking out, saying it hasn't worked.
Just an interesting thing about Louise Perry. I saw this morning, she actually has become a Christian since writing that book.
Is that right?
She wrote the book agnostic, and now has converted to Christianity, going, she cannot believe that sociological truth and supernatural truth would not meet. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. So
you have to be very careful if you start researching God's good creation.
100%.
God's word, if you research it, does tend to lead you to God's word. So for anyone out there who's researching, beware, because you're going to end up
your life may be transformed.
And we love it.
Transforming you to believe that someone out there is a creator of this world.
So let's explore that. You did make that distinction between intimacy, sexual intimacy, and sexual intercourse. Can you explore that for us a little bit?
Okay. That sexual intercourse, by definition, is genital penis in vagina, if I may be excused for using correct anatomical terms.
Go nuts.
By the way, if you're listening as parents, it's something you should be teaching your little children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do not use fancy words. Anyway, that's another story. But intercourse, by definition, is coitus, penis, vagina. Intimacy extends this to sensual contact. So it's still contact, but not necessarily in intercourse or coitus. You see, the significant thing there is that many people just think sexual intimacy equals intercourse, but it's not. You know, not every erotic arrow points towards your genitals. God created, of course, it had to be the gentlemen who laugh about it. If there were ladies there, they would be nodding in agreement.
They'd be nodding in agreement. 100% they would be.
That's right. So your whole body is filled with nerve endings. And therefore, we need to extend sexuality to involve that whole body experience. And when you are close contact with someone, body to body, especially genital contact or close, kissing and touching, even touching the breast, the genitals, it does send up those bonding hormones. This is part of the reason we are very careful about advising young people when they ask, when I'm dating, how far is too far? And I'm like, that is not the question. The question is, firstly, when you are aroused, you basically, if you're a teenager, you're out of your brain anyway, because, the hormones are such that, and your chemicals in your brain, you're out of control. But the other thing is, if you are going to have bodily contact, especially if you are skin to skin, it's not for nothing that the Bible calls it a naked and no shame.
Sure.
Sure. Nakedness, when you are close, intimate, body to body, skin to skin, you form a bond.
Yeah.
Not as much as maybe if you have the coitus and the kind of orgasmic experience. Orgasm sends the oxytocin through the pulpit, brings the pulpit down. But, or maybe I should say the steeple. The pulpit is not quite high enough to bring the steeple down. But the reality is that just intimacy is a bonding act.
It's interesting that you kind of made the point, and fairly, that of course the guys are giggling at that point, and if the women were present, they'd be kind of nodding.
To be fair, we are quite immature though.
What do you mean quite immature? I'm
let's just.
I'm 44 who acts like a 12-year-old all the time, just the way it works.
We're gonna giggle a lot.
Seriously, every time I see my wife come out of the shower, I'm all like it's just the way it operates for me, I'm afraid. But it does touch on some of these things that do men and women think about sex differently and sexual intimacy different in that way?
A lovely question. I was going to, when you started asking the question, when you said, do men and women think, I was going to say, do men and women think about sex as often as each other, or whatever the question. Anyway, let's think. Men and women are different.
Yeah.
As Christians, we would say, let's look at Genesis. When God made man, he made man, and then he provided this suitable helper. And you look at the body, you look at the brain, and you just realize there is such a difference. Now, that's looking at Genesis. But I'm a biologist, and so we look at the brain, we look decades of research studying sexual response, sexual desire. And look, males are created with very much higher testosterone levels. Now, women have testosterone too. May not realize it, but women also have a certain low level. But men have over 5 times more than women. And testosterone is a desire driver.
Wow.
Now, men generally are more easily aroused, feel desire more rapidly. Women, on the other hand, are, and this is well researched, are, I would say, slower in being aroused.
Yeah.
Okay, to just think about it. Think like men are a little like a microwave. You press one button and it's on and ready to go.
Yeah.
Whereas women
and 2 minutes later,
are
it's finished.
a little like, women are more like a crock pot or an oven that needs to be warmed up before the cake goes in. So you see, when it comes to desire and arousal, men do get aroused faster. Now, remember when we say this, it is based on research. And research works on the fact that most subjects or most people we look at would respond this way.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that all men have like an instant arousal. There are some men who would fit kind of more into the female pattern of slow arousal, and some women who would be more rapidly aroused. There would be some women who sometimes, like you would, as a man, as a husband, walk in and she's like swinging from the chandelier ready for sex. And you're kind of tired because it's the end of the day. So that could happen. And another time, she would be like, I'm a little tired, but my husband, he wants sex. I know he's in a mood for it. And you know what? If we have sex, then I know he's going to be happy tomorrow morning. So let's go into it. So we vary. But in general, men are aroused quicker than women. But here's the very interesting thing. And that is that Once the man is aroused, the woman may say, I'm not quite up feeling, but let's go. Now is the interesting point. If the man understands his partner, we talk about marriage, his wife, and takes the time to understand what arouses her, where she likes to be touched, how she likes to be held and kissed. Do not assume, gentlemen, that every woman wants her genitals immediately touched or kissed or whatever. Remember the whole body eroticism. And women really, most women enjoy this. So when a man takes the time, and the woman too, takes the time to sensually stimulate a husband, that joint sensuality then arouses the woman. And then her desire rises. So can you see the man, quick desire, quick arousal. The woman, slower desire and slower arousal. Now, if the couple don't understand this, the man is like, yay, I have a desire, I'm aroused, I've got the erection, I've had the sex, I've had the orgasm, done and dusted, ready for bed. And the wife is going, hey, I'm just feeling desire and arousal. So enjoy the journey.
Sure.
And take your time to arouse and help each other to enjoy it. Now, there's one little caveat here. Sometimes, you may not want to take all this time. Sometimes there is room for a quicker sexual experience. I like to say when I'm doing talks, there is a time when you decide, okay, we'll just take a drive through, hamburger or pizza today, just that quickie dinner. And another time you want to sit down and have that 3-course gourmet meal. Sex is like that.
Right. So there's a drive-through sex and then a restaurant sex, and it's about figuring out which one we're going to engage with.
100%. Yes.
Is that how it works? So, or the microwave dinner, or a beautiful slow cooked meal is what we're talking about in that regard.
I guess I'm. What's interesting to me though, like as you talking, Patricia, like, and there is these distinctions and these differences. The trouble is. And I will speak. No one's taught. I've known that men get aroused quicker and women get aroused slowly. But in terms of actually teaching how to bridge that gap, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Is some of the challenges. Like, I'm not necessarily sure. I know, although I've tried and I've been married for now 10 years, and I hope it's been okay. But
Ash is not here to ask, mate.
Yes,
So.
But by and large, it's just sort of going, Lord. How do we bridge that gap between this fast arousal, the slow arousal? And I know that maybe the answer would be communication, but communication about what? Because talking about sex can sometimes be awkward.
I'm glad you used the word communication, because the important thing is, as a couple, you've been created. Now we're talking to marrieds. You've been created for intimacy. You've been created to have that naked, no shame, one flesh relationship. So, in our book, The Best Sex for Life, we have a questionnaire at the end where and when I do talks, I encourage couples to do this. And that is to just think, what do I enjoy about being, let me just take one example. How do I like being touched, or where and how do I like being touched on my body?
Yeah.
And on the other column, how and where do I think my spouse likes being touched? So you fill in a number of questions like this, and this is what we call an icebreaker on couple sensuality. Then you exchange the paper, and then you see, like, my wife has said that I like being sucked on my big toe. And I hate anyone touching my big toe. Where did she ever get that idea from? I mean, that is sort of flippant. But, she might say, I think my husband likes being stroked on his penis. And you might think, I like that, but I also like being, I don't know, having my back scratched.
Yeah.
And so that opens up a chance to say, oh, where did you get this idea that I like only being touched on my genital? Or the husband might say, I think my wife really enjoys it when we have oral sex.
Yeah.
And I stimulate her orally. And she would come back and say, you know what? I kind of put up with that because I thought you wanted it. But I would actually much rather have you touch or stimulate my breast. So sometimes you need a little help with breaking down that awkwardness.
Yeah.
Because you know what? We didn't grow up talking about sex.
No.
And, even if you went through good premarital counseling, most of it doesn't involve sex.
Yeah.
Like, I just love it. My friends here, so many couples, young people tell me that they go for premarital counseling, and at some point their pastor, I worship with the Anglican Church, so often it's one of an Anglican pastor, just hands them the best sex for life and says, now go and read this and come back and tell me if you have any questions about it. So we need to move beyond, ask Auntie Pat and, really start using tools even, questionnaires that help couples to start talking about these issues.
Yeah. I think that's so vital. I honestly, I really do. Even in my own marriage, we've been married for a long time. We've been married for 21 years, but we've been together since we were 15, well before we came to Christ. And even there, like it takes such a long time to learn to communicate in such a way. And I still think that it still feels awkward at times. It's difficult to talk about what you want, what you like, and so on and so forth. And I think we do need to get into the habit of talking well in the bedroom in that regard. And I think I guess the only way is to become comfortable is by doing it more, right? More conversations and giving each other the chance to be able to speak and to listen well in that regard.
Yeah.
And also, I think the important thing is don't say, the conversations have to be in the bedroom. No. Because at the point when your hormones are rising and you want to jump into bed, that's really the point when you want to sit down and say, all right, darling, let's discuss about how you like to be touched today. But make those intimacy conversations kind of, maybe when you go out for a special date somewhere and you're sitting around, I wanted to say by the beach, but maybe I should say in Orange, you're sitting by, Lake Canobolas. I think that is so
There's nothing more romantic than Lake Canobolas, Patricia.
So
I love it. I think it is such a lovely place for couples to go. So if you're in Orange, go sit by Lake Canobolas.
Yeah.
And talk about sex.
And talk about sex.
Just, talk about how you enjoy being together and how you like being held. And then if that turns you on, jump in the car and rush home.
Or just do it in the car, as long as no one else can see.
The car park in Lake Canobolas is quite open, so you might get arrested. So
maybe just drive around the
home.
corner. I don't know. That's good. As we kind of think, about this, one of the things that like as pastors, we've, like for me in ministry a long time now, that keeps coming up is the difficulty that comes in marriages when pornography and the likes, where one partner has kind of found themselves into a line of pornography and the like. And we do know that there's a whole range of negative effects, and there's been a lot of science around that. Can you unpack a little bit for us why pornography is so destructive? But also added to that, one of the questions that seems to be rising at the moment is the rise of kind of fantasy smart, this kind of fantical kind of writings that involve a lot of sex within inside of the writings, and it's quite quite graphic, it's quite explicit in that regard. What kind of negative effects are we, or effects positive even perhaps, with the use of those kind of elements?
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Patricia, but that's what's informed a lot of my upbringing when I was younger. This is what was there. It was evidence. And what taught me about sex was nothing in the Christian world, was all this pornography. And it's like this open access and open slather where you can literally open your phone and you'll find it with searching one word. And you'll have access to all of this.
When I was young and I was like early teenage years, so much of my understanding of sex was formed. I used to wash up at a butcher shop. And in the back room of the butcher shop was a whole stack of picture magazines and People magazines. And it wasn't just the explicit content, but there was writings around sexual experiences and other bits and pieces. They were the things that formed so much of my understanding. And I understand that it's a negative thing. So, Patricia, again, the rise of pornography and these kind of fantasy smart type stuff, what kind of effects are they having?
I'm just thinking there's so much of information, but I'm going to be just putting it into a little quick information packet for you. Pornography is, by definition, anything that is created to sexually titillate. Now, you are kind of just above being young adults, I think, but things have changed from the time you were like upper teens or teenagers and exposed to pornography. What is available now, whether it be on YouTube or TikTok or video clips or anything, is extreme pornography, extreme violence, extreme avatar porn, like anime, hentai, even comic books involve avatars, which is very pornified. So the extreme, because it's been taken to a very extreme level.
Yep.
Now, you talk of written erotica, and even that erotica is so extreme now. Sometimes I go to the library and just go to the romance section and just pick up books. And it's also like in the second chapter, you start getting very explicit sex. And I'm like, why? So anyway, so that's what it is. Now, why is it so dangerous? Because, as you rightly said, it has become the sex educator of our youth. And pornography, okay, let me step back to a bit of science. Our brains, created by God, of course, are wired to have sex in an intimate, bodily experience of man-woman. So there is an embodiment, a reality about it. And so we are wired for that. Now, pornography takes over that good wiring and rewires the brain to see sex as that which is portrayed by porn, which is extreme, abusive, instant gratification. Yep. Now, we just talked, when we talked about male and female differences, that sex takes time to really be satisfying, but not in porn. You get whatever you want, whenever you want it, at the press of a button. Of course, now you even get sex bots. So we can have an AI companion who will do whatever I want. So pushing even that sort of virtual reality to the extreme. So our minds begin to even blur the boundary between reality and pornography or AI or virtual.
Sure.
It takes over the mind. Now, that, of course, in the long term leads to addiction, and that's really an awful end result. But even if you're not into the addiction phase, once you wired your brain, reality becomes boring. So a man, and mind you, I'm saying man, but we have increasing females who are now into porn and reading erotic literature. A man who's watching porn, and that is what stimulates him, is not turned on by his spouse because she's a normal woman. She doesn't look like a porn star. She doesn't produce instant sex and instant orgasms. Sex takes time. So it completely makes him insensitive and uncaring. Similarly for a woman, she is into porn. She could see herself as compared to these porn images and just have this whole thing. My body is not worth it because I don't look like any of these porns. And you know what? I don't want to behave like these porn stars anyway. So there is this affecting even body image and men body image too. You don't want to be. There are men who watch porn and then say, I don't want to be this abusive man, the whole toxic masculinity thing. And so I don't want to be married. I don't want to be like that. So it affects male and female relationship at a number of levels. And that's the main problem about pornography. It destroys relationship. It makes us see the other increasingly as a commodity, which plays into our culture, which says, I will do what I desire. We are in an individualistic, desire-driven culture where even our children are being told, having your personal desire met is the only thing that's going to make you happy. So if you desire to watch porn, nobody should stop you. Never mind what it does to your brain. Never mind what it does to your relationship. You talk to girls who say the things boys expect them to do now. And it's all porn behavior.
Yep.
It's so sad. So it destroys relationship, it destroys your dating life, and it definitely destroys your marriages. When I don't do counseling, but when I was doing counseling like pre-COVID, I was seeing Christian couples, even pastors, theology students who were struggling with pornography and whose marriages were in trouble.
Yeah.
So anyone out there, girl, male or female, if you're struggling with porn, please ask for help.
Yeah.
There is nothing called a little porn or good porn. There is nothing to say like some counselors would say, oh, watching a little porn can help your marriage. Of course not. You watch porn, of course you're aroused. And then you go to your spouse. Who are you making love to? You're making love to your fantasy porn star, not to your spouse.
Yeah. And I guess this is one of the challenges, right? Like whether it is, and I think it's interesting that you made the point that pornography is anything that actually stimulates us towards sex. And I think that's the thing, is we often want to make distinctions between pornography, as in, Pornhub or visual kind of things, or we want to make a distinction if that's porn. So, fantasy literature is different, but it's actually one and the same thing. Once it's stimulating us right across the board, there is something that's going on there that's not good for us. And
also, Nathan, the point is that, as we discussed before, men are visual.
Yeah.
Men are a lot more visual. Men will generally and we do research. Sexology research is so much of fun. You can put men in and show them pictures. And men get aroused easily at the sight of a naked woman and naked female genitals. Women don't get particularly aroused if they're shown an erect penis. They're more likely to giggle rather than be aroused. So
Me too.
Women need the context of caring. So that's why erotic literature, where there is a storyline, where there is think that whatever shades of grey that there was. It was a horrible book. It was really badly written. I'm sorry, but I am a writer. But it was really bad, but it was just erotic in a story form.
Yeah.
And so women were aroused by it. It was amazing. We need to be so aware of that.
Yeah, it's good.
I guess my question would be, why are there some counselors that are saying pornography is good? Why,
or fantasy literature.
Yeah, why would they assert that almost as a truth? Whether I'm not sure if it's Christian or not, I wouldn't know. But I'm just saying that there certainly are people that are saying what you've said. A little porn is good for your marriage. Is that just to sort of circumvent some bigger problems that are going on in the marriage?
Well, not really. I think what the thinking behind that is, and look, let me be absolutely frank. When I first started studying sexuality, did my early studies in Hawaii, and I spent quite some time at what's known as the Kinsey Institute in Indiana, which is like the prime sex research institute. Not so much now, but at that time we're talking 1980. And I worked with people where, they were working in pornography. And the theory there is that if you know to control yourself, then watching a little bit of mild porn will teach you something about how to arouse your partner or how to engage in sexual act. But unfortunately, the research tells us that you can't stop at that mild first stage. Of course, now you can't even find those. We're talking 1980 when there were videos that were created supposedly for sex education of couples, bordering on pornography, but they were marketed as education. So today, I don't think you even get those because everything goes straight into porn. So that was the thinking, that it kind of educated to know your body, to know your partner's body, to know how to touch them. But that doesn't really work because once you start watching it and you see this, if you're a male and you're watching and you have this woman, with that male and making love and they're having great orgasm, it changes your expectations. Now you think, if I touch my wife this way, then she's going to have this great orgasm and we're going to have a wonderful time. But every individual is special.
Yeah.
And we need to have our unique spouse and learn how to have the best sex for life with our unique spouse.
Yeah.
Not necessarily with some porn stuff.
Which again makes sense, right, from a biblical point of view, that the intention of sex is to create oneness, right?
Yeah.
And so we're not robots. We're all created in the image of God, but we're all unique. And so a part of that exploration of one another and figuring out what works for each other is a process of actually becoming one with that person. That it is unique to that couple. It's something. It's a discovery rather than it is a prescribed kind of methodology.
Yeah.
And I think that by nature, like we talk about this a lot around even the nature of the gospel, right? That the gospel itself is a discovery of intimacy with God, right? That as we discover the love that Jesus has for us and his willingness to go to the absolute extent of death upon a cross to bring us into his presence, to bring us into his kingdom. We spend a life of discipleship, of becoming more and more intimate with the one in which we've been created to worship. And there is this lifelong process of intimacy with the Lord. And so, again, you mentioned this before, Patricia, that marriage is a reflection of Christ and the church. Sex is a picture of a deeper intimacy between God and ourselves. And so, of course, that's going to be discovery orientated then. Of course, it's going to take years of investment, of deepening relationship. It's not going to happen in an instant. It's not prescribed.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. One of the things that hits me, Patricia, that it seems that we've talked about it a couple of times here, that orgasms seem to be kind of the goal of sex, and obviously, as we've discovered, that I think we already know the answer.
It pulls the pulpit down, right?
It pulls the pulpit down. A good sex, a good orgasm pulls the pulpit, but apparently the pulpit's not high enough.
Yeah, so we've got to get something.
So maybe we need to get some scaffold and put a pulpit higher. I don't know, but I know the answer is going to come that obviously not after our discussion, that orgasm is not the goal of sex, but it's important too, right?
Yeah, look, orgasms are good, but not necessary. I think I love that. Of course you'd agree. You're a man. No, I'm just kidding. That orgasms are nice, but not necessary. You see, again, we come back to the fact that male and female are different.
Yeah.
You see, for men, you're aroused, the blood rushes to your genitals, you get that erection, and then If you're going into sex, you have the intercourse, you have the orgasm, and for men, the brain orgasm and the ejaculate occur together. So you have that, you know, I'm saying fireworks over the harbor bridge, although you're in orange, but you have that fireworks over the harbor bridge experience and the ejaculate, the brain feeling simultaneously. And then you're like done and dusted, ready for bed. Now, women, having been aroused slowly, sometimes would go on to an orgasm. At other times, they'll feel really warm and fuzzy and have a really nice whole body experience of intimacy. So, my advice to women and to couples is don't stress if the girl, the woman, your wife, is not having that fireworks over the harbor bridge type, thrashing around on the bed, falling off, that kind of orgasm. If she is happy and satisfied, that's okay. And if the word is, if she is satisfied. Now, if the woman is really feeling frustrated that I'm never able to really reach this experience of orgasm, I would suggest that would be a time when you need to talk to someone, because there are ways of what we talk of sensuality exercises, of couple working together to try and increase that chance of the woman reaching that orgasm. Because some girls in marriage, some women, they have this inbuilt almost, I don't know, something that depresses that ability. It's like something that's keeping them from, because good girls don't do this. They're kind of brought up with all that.
Yeah.
So letting go of that in the naked and no shame one flesh marriage can sometimes be difficult. So sometimes it you could do with a little bit of counseling or therapy in that situation. But most times, just work with it as a couple.
Sure. So say, for instance, those couples who do need that, where do they turn? Where would you recommend that they turn to go and explore that?
I would suggest a good couples therapist or a sex therapist. There aren't many of them around who are Christians, but there are a couple. So if you want to contact me, or I can put you in touch with a couple of counselors I know who do online counseling. So Christian counselor.
One of the things that is always the case, right? So we want to always be kind of a practical element in that regard. And, living out in the regions isn't always easy to access different services and the likes. And so that's why I pressed on that one. So if you do, if you do want to get hold of some of that information, then I encourage you to get hold of Patricia, Auntie Pat. I loved how you said that, Auntie Pat. She'll be helpful in that space from there.
And you can contact me on my website. There is a contact me on my website. So if you contact me there, I'll get the message and I can send you a link to a couple of good counselors, Christian counselors who work online.
Thanks.
I do want to, I think you said that like for some girls or young ladies, their upbringing, sort of this good girl mentality, has this restriction, almost acts as a roadblock in that space. Are there other challenges at play that sort of are featured in marriage and sex that are not necessarily porn related, but that become roadblocks like upbringing or whatever that prevent us from having the best sex for life? Like, what are some of those things?
Okay, there are some things. Some of them are cultural expectations.
Yep.
Some of them are familial expectations. Some of them are, unfortunately, promulgated by the church. For instance, let's say the church, because that's our home.
Yep.
Sometimes in the church, we keep telling young people, oh, keep yourself pure. And somehow, when you get married, by some magical thing, you are going to have the most wonderful sex, and you're going to have orgasms on the first night. I'm sorry, people who are listening, young people. Good sex takes time and work. It might happen on your first night of your honeymoon, but it is not always so. So we unfortunately give this expectation that everything's going to be wonderful when you're married. And look, sometimes it's an engineer marrying an IT consultant. They haven't even learned where the genitals are, and what's going to happen. Like, he's like, a clitoris? What's that? And she's going like, I don't know whether I want to even see that, much less have it in me. I'm telling you exactly what young couples have said to me.
Yeah,
These
absolutely.
are the very words that couples have used to me.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful on what expectations we teach our young people. And it doesn't help that some pastors, in goodness of heart, but when speaking about marriage, talk about my hot wife. Like, hello, you keep your hot wife to your bedroom, but don't place expectations on our young men and our women that that's what sex has to be like. So the church has partly, and of course, really good premarital chats with couples who are getting married. So that's one. Now, when it comes to culture, there is this expectation that two individuals thinking, I need my desires met. So even if you're not listening to this as a Christian, you're going into marriage, you might have had sex before, and you're thinking, I'm getting married, now I'm going to get all the sex I need whenever I need it. And that doesn't bode well for a couple, because you're going into it with selfish expectation, which is our culture. It's individualistic, desire-driven culture of, I am what matters. I need my desires met. The best sex is that when two people are looking at each other and thinking, how can I make this good for you?
Yeah.
That's really
and
good.
both people thinking, how can I make this good for you, makes for the best sex.
Yeah.
But that's where we communication, and sometimes it's about compromise and even sacrifice, between a couple to have the best sex for life, because things change with age. Now, there is also the myth of watching the videos or pornography or movies, and sex has to be spontaneous. The couple meet, they fall into instant love. They go in the bedroom, they rip the clothes off, they fall into bed, and it's all so spontaneous. No. The best sex is sometimes, if not always, like, darling, shall we be spontaneous at 6 p.m. this Saturday?
It's a good plan.
There are children around. Planned sex can be good sex.
Yeah.
We should be careful about this. It's got to be spontaneous.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there is this, once you're married, anything goes in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And when I was counseling, have couples come and ask me just that. Again, sometimes influenced by pornography, often influenced by culture. But once you're married, anything goes. And I tell the couple, you've got to be really careful. You've got to think, is what I'm asking or expecting from my spouse something that might either physically or even psychologically harm my spouse?
Sure.
For instance, think of something fairly simple like oral sex. Many couples practice it, oral sex being stimulating each other's genitals orally. Many couples enjoy it, but some people don't, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Maybe cultural, they think the genitals are, somehow not clean. When I tell people, look, you have more bugs in your mouth than on your partner's genitals. We know that. But that's by the way. But whatever reason, they may not like oral sex, in which case, to not necessarily force, but to require it can be quite, distressing to the partner. So be careful about what you're asking, whether it's emotionally or even physically. I mean, unfortunately, I get couples asking me about bizarre sex practices, and I say some of those can be harmful.
Sure.
And think to yourself, am I building up my spouse? What I said earlier, am I looking to his or her good?
Yeah.
But that's what marriage is about. Constantly looking to build up the other. And your sex life is no different.
There's a tension in that, though. There's a tension in going, I'm constantly looking to build you up and not allowing the expectation that I'm expecting you to also have that. It's a weird, like,
but I think that's
complex.
It is complex, but I think that's the case not just in the bedroom. Like I think that's the case
it's
right
a marriage.
across
It's a marriage thing,
I think
right?
that's the challenge in marriage right across
it's a marriage
the
thing,
board.
100%.
And you know, I think one of the challenges even in that space, as I think about it, we do want our expectations met. We do want to feel that. But you know, one of the things that kind of strikes me all the time is when we make our vows to our spouse, they're never conditional.
Yeah.
Like we don't make our vows and say, as long as you meet my needs, I will promise to, and we go through our vows. And I think sometimes it's helpful for us to remember that our vows are never conditional. Our vow was our bond, regardless on whether our needs were going to be met, regardless on whether the other person is meeting the vow or not. But I think intentionally, by the work of the Spirit, if we are seeking one another's best in that space, then I think that is the picture that Patricia is painting, that I think is a beautiful one. I think our own nature, our own sinful nature, muddies that water a little bit. And again, I think that's the exploration in marriage, that this is a lifelong process of becoming one.
Yeah.
It's not instant, although in one sense it begins instantly after marriage and we have sex in that way. But it's a process of lifelong in that space of serving one another and caring for one another. And the truth of the matter is, I think sometimes we do well at that, and then there's other times in seasons in marriage where we do really poorly at that, and that's where the tension comes and communication becomes so vital.
Yeah.
It's just not easy.
And also, like you mentioned that, your expectations and your needs, that's part of communication. It's okay to have expectations and needs, but we need to express them and talk about them. And then, your partner, as I said in the questionnaire, if you're discussing it, your partner might say, look, why did you never tell me? I would love to do such and such. Or I would, I can live with that. How about we this? And, maybe I don't like that, but how about we modify it and do it this way?
Yeah.
So expressing your needs to your partner. I mean, Christ and the church, he calls us to express our needs. He calls us to lament to him.
Yeah,
so
true.
we have that one flesh. We can speak to our spouse. We can lament to our spouse. We can, share our intimate needs with our spouse. And that's what we build each other up.
Yeah, and I think we need to do that with grace and with love and with,
and I think
space.
With honesty. I mean, part of like something that's just confronted me now is part of it going, hey, I am aware that some of my expectations may be rooted in my upbringing around pornography, and I'm going, let's talk through that and see, because that's a mess. It's not beautiful. It's not something that, but it is like going, it's fantasy rooted in the sinful space that I found myself in, and trying to then bring that to the table and be honest with my spouse and go, look here, this is the mess. Let's talk about this and have that conversation.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, right? Like, sex is such a beautiful part of what God has given us as his gift.
Yeah.
Right? It really is. And we want to explore this well inside of our marriages because I do think a good, healthy sex life is absolutely intricate to having a good marriage right across the board. And there are going to be seasons and challenges, medical and the likes, where this is going to be interrupted. And I think I really appreciated what you were saying, Patricia, around the distinction between sexual intimacy and sexual intercourse. I think there is a space in that needs to continually be explored in that way. And I do think that we have a responsibility in the church to teach well in this space. I think there is, Patricia, you said it a couple of times, even in premarital preparation and counselling in that space, that we actually do need to do a better job by and large, as pastors and church leaders,
but even
helping people.
Even in the youth space, right? And talking through this and going, hey, because and we've probably run out of time now, but just talking, maybe coming back, Patricia, and just helping us talk through purity culture and this idea that you need to be pure, and then but suddenly on your marriage day,
it's all bets off.
All bets are off, and you're expected to perform, and it's like, well, no, how do we navigate what that space is supposed to be like biblically that leads to the best sex for life?
Could we have you? Are you interested in coming back, Patricia, so that we can talk about sex and teenagers and helping teens in that space and young adults into that space? Would love to have you back.
Look, I'm happy to, but I just want to leave one thought with you that I think it's really important for couples listening in. And that is, if you've listened to this talk and you're feeling like, oh my goodness, I'm really stuck, I don't know what to do. Look, there's nothing shameful about asking for help.
Absolutely.
You know, whether you want to speak to your pastor or whether you want to just directly on to a therapist or a counselor or to just a wiser older couple. You know, you want to talk to an older couple you trust in church, please reach out for help.
Yeah.
Because we are a family in Christ.
Yeah.
And families help each other.
Yep.
So don't feel ashamed if you think you are like falling short of the best sex for life. It's just reach out.
Yeah.
Because it's the two of you in that naked, no shame, one flesh. And what is good for you may not be what's good for the other. One person likes roast chicken, another one likes a hot curry. But, you know, our tastes vary, and it's okay to ask for help.
Absolutely. And so I love that picture in terms of a family dynamic. So let me just give one more shameful plug to Auntie Pat's book, The Best Sex for Life.
Yeah.
Get hold of that. But Auntie Pat, thank you so much for coming on.
It was
really appreciated on being a part of the Balancing Act. Take care. We'd love to have you back again very soon.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be with you.
Thanks.
God bless.
Thanks so much, Patricia.
Cheers. Hey, man, that was fun.
That was funny.
That was funny.
Yeah, it was
really
cool.
good.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that as well. I thought Patricia, I mean, man, she's an incredible woman, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's so engaging and so knowledgeable in so many different spaces.
100%.
I really can't wait to have her back on a multiple kind of thing. I think there's so much to explore around this regard.
And I mean, I think that's my only disappointment is that we touched on so many different things that we could have dug deeper and deeper, and we
for sure.
but I think at least we can consider this some sort of introduction into the space.
Well, I hope
that'll allow us to have multiple conversations.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I found really helpful in that conversation is her theological framework for sex and relationships. I've like, it's one of those things that we know and we explore. But there was a couple of kind of moments where that knowledge and understanding actually became quite deep for me in that space, which I really appreciated, that whole sense of a lifelong exploration of oneness as it is with Christ, I think is just really profound
100%.
in that regard. And I wonder whether taking hold of that would actually be really important for marriages when they're going through challenges and difficulties, is the sense in which this is, it is a hard space, whether that is because of some sexual frustrations or whatever that is. But there's this process in which saying, it's never linear, that this journey of oneness it's a little bit winding and twisting and up and down, but staying the course is so beautiful because it actually does lead to this ideal picture of true oneness in a marriage in that regard.
Yeah, I think, and look, two things stuck out for me that she kept hitting on, right? One was naked, no shame, one flesh.
Yeah,
she said
great.
that often, right? And
yeah.
I mean, it's such a contrast to this walk of shame world we kind of live in, where I can have my one night stand, but then I've just got to do my walk of shame.
The walk of shame, kind
of thing,
for
how we put sex and shame in the same space, and how pornography may inject shame into some of the things we feel around sex,
which is odd because it's supposed to liberate, and yet it actually adds shame.
Yeah,
isn't that it's a weird space in that regard.
And how all of these elements are at play. But she's going naked, no shame, one flesh. That was Jesus's model. That's what God intended.
Intends,
and I loved just constantly hitting that home, naked, no shame, one flesh. And the other thing that I think was just great, and it hits out of what you just said, right, is good sex takes time.
Yeah, it takes time.
It's not going to happen fireworks and rainbows and kittens all sort of on the first night.
I don't know what you're doing when there's rainbows and kittens, but
hey, you never know.
But I think for me, what really struck out, and I think you're right, like it is, they're good things to hit out of. But I think it was quite profound when she said pornography is anything that actually stimulates. And causes some negativity. So it's not just the way we first think about pornography as, kind of, on a phone or whatever the case may be, but anything in which is causing a stimulation. And the fact that was backed by kind of science in so many ways, and the stimulation. And so whether that is erotica or fantasy smart, or whether that is pornography, or even strong sex scenes in movies, or whatever the case may be, that it actually does have an effect on us.
Yeah.
And that needs to be talked through and navigated in relationships and marriages in that regard. And I think we need to be careful in the way that operates.
I absolutely agree. I think the key is communication at the end of the day. Keep talking, because the reality is we're all bringing a mess into the space.
And I think that's the thing, right? Is we are, and again, it goes back to that whole lifelong process of oneness. That we do come into relationships, we come into marriages with a whole host of baggage and mess, right? Some of which are cultural, some of which are societal, some of which are ethnic, some of which
thrust upon us in our childhood, and we don't know what's going on,
and we don't
about
understand, and that there's this whole mixture
100%.
of elements that come into play in the midst. And so I think the need for us as husband and wives is to have these good conversations. But I am super interested to have her back in terms of helping us as leaders of youth and young adults, as parents of youth and young adults. How do we help navigate this space? What I think we do have a significant role to play in education, because clearly the world's education is detrimental.
Yeah.
And or certainly very unhelpful to make sense. 100%. And so we've got a responsibility there to figure that out. And I think that's where I'm really thankful to God for people like Patricia Weerakoon, who can help navigate some of that space.
Yeah, I'm keen to have her back as well. I think there's still much to be said and much to be heard. And, she mentioned someone like Louise Perry or whatever. I think reaching out to different voices on this is a helpful and a good thing. Hopefully, maybe trying to get a male in the space to help talk through that, because it's
there is. And I appreciated, Patricia's kind of clear depiction that by and large, men and women are different. We do think differently about sex. But again, her focus on communication, so that even though we think differently, we're getting together to where we are having closer understandings with our spouse. Right. Yep. So I think we've got to be very careful in the way and who we go to and talk to about that. Like if we're going to our friends who are also in a similar stage of life and they're also frustrated, that's actually going to be a bit of a negative space. I love that Patricia was saying, talk to people who are trustworthy. Grab an older couple in the life of the community of faith, or talk to the pastors, or whatever the case, or read good Christian literature in this regard, because what's working in another marriage isn't actually the picture that needs to work in my marriage. Because we're different and we need to figure that out together.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key. And so, like, the reality is, again, what she said is important. This is not an easy space, and it's kind of messy. And if you're struggling, get in touch with someone.
Yeah. So again, as we kind of wrap this up, Patricia offered very kindly that you can send her an email through her website if this is a place you want to explore for your own relationship. And she can help try and direct you into some of those spaces with Christian counsellors and likes who specialise in sex and intimacy in the life of relationships. But dude, that was so much fun. Thanks Thanks
dude.
for joining me
back.
with this. And yeah, it is good to be back in this
Yeah.
regard. And thank you guys for joining us. Have a cracking day.